na helicopter ekwenye nkwanhia anase etifiri soro behwe fom ma enonam so nipa maako nwotwe fa ahoto anananom se yedo no me ye sure say okay ene ana report no aba na ene mpanimfo bodwasi dwane sentrofo akasa de report no aba bonte a kire kwan ya enam so ma helicopter itumi tifiri wiem behwe fom a nipa maako nwotwe baako kura ntumi anka agi to ananam se yedo no me de hwama ne bo no de ebrew ye from me dan kwasi prince Daily View GH sini na yenyina ye beka ya enano da August bosumi ana etoso nwotwe ne da na etoso ensia eye 6 August ya etwamu yi ana Ghana yanti asempa se helicopter ye friend Z-9 etu Ghana Air Force nkena ha ede nani akire bia ya ye frɛ okumase obuase mpotam wo baabi ana Ghana mpanimfo akukuni ene akuku dam mpanimfo etim Ghana Defense Minister mpanimfo aka etim ekodi adwumaso de abo man kronkron Ghana akwoti ato ewo kwaye bimu ema ebra helicopter eti free wiem beto fom no kuranim nyanyi ni nyankopon anim no bonsam atiko helicopter kwamna no mukura ntumi anka agi anamisisi mpo eyame yame no nam so nipa maako nwotwe to anananom se yedo ma asemi ebebo Ghana fo pusa na sa asemi ye behumu no kura ye humu no kura no kwansi na mpanifo kire mu se ade baako a aya na ebo helicopter ni wie muhyem a ye frɛ no black box mpanifo kire mu so mahu na black box yi adwuma a edie ene se kwan a nkwanhia no fa so si ye nyina black box yi akoye communication device a ebe record bibia kwan a ebetuo ebe land sinse wiem ene kwan accident ne baye no adwumaso a black box no edi eno no na eno na mpanimfo se omahu black box ya mo de kɔ aburukyire ego biebie makɔ bebe nani ase de nam so man kwanhia ne baye nyina no omo de bebe som ye ne nkame akɔye ze Ghana fo ye wura fi enso ene mpanimfo de enhwehwemu ne de aba se report yi omunsa aka na ene panimpa odi eye enhwehwemu ye nim no ye friend no Captain Retired Port Fodjo ono na edi nhwemu yi anim na papa ne sentrofo kasa no ewo nhwehwemu yi ho ana o kire mu se black box a yehu ye na ye de kwa abrochire ne ye de kwa bia ya na ye friend no Avec Flight Decoding Center sa bia ye ewo China fiti eye 12 August ni mu wo ebepem September bosumi ana etoso enkron ne da na etoso eduono no emienu 22nd September na eye report no ebaye na empanifo kasa mu ana se Captain Retired Paul Fodjo kasa na o kire mu se ihwemu a edikan ya omoye ya omuhu ye no eye Ghana ne ye weda ne nye ebra na helicopter ye friend Z-9 eba betuo na wiem ayokusukukuku chese ewiem nyenyenyenyenye weda no eye very poor as ensuo no eba beto papa ne brofo kasa na o kire mu se the weather in southern Ghana was poor eno enam so a delay na chese eye Z-9 helicopter yi etu bese no nwotwe 8 am ho baabi ene na the one na weather ne nye no impanimfo kura delay ya no mo pentem papa na enye asem ketua entidi edikan no eye weather no ana na enye eno ka ho bi na nkwanhia yi esiye na papa ne kasem na osan ekire mu se points number 2 helicopter na Ghana ye kokokoto ye free China for nsem no eba Ghana Armed Force aso ye ho 2015 na helicopter na nkasa de 2012 ana omoye helicopter no a chese edu 10 years into 10 years echi no ke chese Ghana ye jai 10 year helicopter na ye jai yusu enso hwan Ghana ye ni sika ye de kwoto foforo na no nam so ya ye ne nkakran enti enano da me eye 18 funu mo ba bi kura na helicopter ne 10 years no expiration date no edu ye ma ye ntumi anto bia mpanifo bo madwe mu pose ye be ne nkakran kopem tama helicopter yi ebeye condemned to grebutu na mpanifo san ekire mu ewo point number 3 ese before na ewiemushen Z-9 helicopter na eba betuo no okọ Ghana Air Force asoye ho a before ewiemushen bia betu no mo wasoye o mo service eye helicopter bia ni plane bia eba betu sa asoye yi service ye hwe se bibia no etumi edimu mo confirm se bibia no correct bibia ye yerede ebetumi ede etu ye kwan na empanimfo so mo ye nhwemu kakra no omo service wie ye no na helicopter no ewo niema baako mienu bia na enhye da enye adwumenso mo omo ye de omo buo mani gu so eno so eka eho bi na empanimfo se ohwe de wa na helicopter no etu na enam wiem na eba besi fom na bibia enya no enti omokra no eyo mo nwa se helicopter na e wa hoode mpanimfo edimu eka bi ewom se o ma service awie na etumi ete ba fom ana ne power no elusia ohwe efiri soro a betehwe fom na ebra na helicopter no ewo wiem eba efom na ewo be se 70 feet sea level nti ba bia na ewo no kra na mu nheda enwa 70 feet and not say ye hwemu abese story building na etwa so bese 4 and say 5 bi ana chese nti no menka ne sa pepepe 70 feet sea level ana etifiri ye behwe forma nipa nwotwe etwa nananom se yedono na papa ye friend Paul Fodro esan kasa no chirim se Z-9 helicopter yi accident no kura ni nyankopon ni omukura matana se adwen ho ahu se da bi omukura na ye omwanwa na ni nyina no yen kan fan hyese wedai ana enam so ma helicopter yi atumi ate every form no nam so nipa nwotwe atoa nananom se yedono na papa ikasem na osan eka kire mu se nhwemu ba konso mu san eye se ebra helicopter yi ate every wiem behwe form no empanimfu ana se search team no edu hot time pepepepepe despite say ti ekokoto nwura mu nyina no empanimfu du ho se omemehwehwemu no etumi awie period as a response empanimfu etam every hakọ nwura mu ho no na time pepepepe na papa ikasem na uchirim so we de adesre no de to Ghana empanimfu amampanimfu Ghana mampani anim se Ghana Air Force ne se omuni ade bia ye friend say stimulation training bia ni ho ekoso wo ho nti no omo sre Ghana ban no se bibi sa wo ho a yenye na yemfa bibia no entumi enimu ene chese de kura ene ni krenkren ne krankran nyina ne se helicopter na beteto form no weather na enye nti ana ma helicopter yi eto form.
On Wednesday 6th August 2025 the Z-9 tail number Golf Hotel Foxtrot 631 helicopter operating a scheduled flight from Accra to Obuasi was involved in a crash at Dampier Forest Reserve of Anochikro, Brofiejo, in the Adansi Ekruform district, Ashanti region. All 3 crew and 5 passengers on board died. The President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, directed the Acting Minister of Defense to constitute an accident investigation board. The Ministry of Defense on the 25th of August 2025 announced through a press release the establishment of the board mandated to inquire into the causes and circumstances leading to the Z-9 Echo Hotel helicopter accident. This investigation has been conducted in accordance with the Ghana Air Force flying orders, the Ghana Air Force Air Staff instructions, Annex 13 of the International Civil Aviation Organization's Convention on International Civil Aviation. Generally, investigations under these regulations are conducted to determine circumstances leading to the accident and prevention of future accidents and incidents. The final report, which was presented, came in a format which had 4 parts. Part 1, factual information. Part 2, analysis of the factual information. Part 3 were the conclusions, which includes the findings, the causes, and all contributory factors. And Part 4, the safety recommendations. The composition of the board. This is now getting into the methodology of the investigation. The composition of the board had national security, Ghana Armed Forces personnel from the Aircraft Accident and Incident Investigation and Prevention Bureau, Ghana, National Intelligence Bureau, and we had some staff from the US Air Force also with us. For the factual information evidence collection, we immediately had, on the 26th of August, a briefing by the preliminary investigation team, PIT as it's called. Now, the preliminary investigation team were sent out on the same day of the accident by the Air Force. Their task was to go to the accident site, secure the site, try to protect and make sure that all perishable evidence was secure. Now, when we speak of perishable evidence, we mean things like information, things like memories, because people forget after a short time. They also have the duty of making sure that in as much as possible, they can capture and do a wreckage diagram of all the parts and so on that were around the crash site, because all these help in deducing what actually caused the accident. So we had a briefing by the PIT team, and they handed over the PIT report. The flight recorder, made up of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, which is typically called the black box, and some personal effects of the passengers. The team then started, having gotten this information, decided to proceed to the accident site to get first-hand knowledge of the accident site and to be able to interview witnesses and so on. We also went through a process of looking at all the maintenance records of the aircraft. We looked at the flight logs of the aircraft, we looked at the flight logs of the crew, we checked on the crew's qualification, we checked on documentation, just to be sure that everything was proper. The flight data and cockpit voice recorder were then transported to the AVIC Flight Decoding Center in Xi'an, China, from the 12th September to 22nd September 2025. Now, AVIC is the Aviation Industry Corporation of China. The aircraft is a Chinese aircraft. They were the manufacturers. They had the software and the hardware capable of decoding and giving us the data from the flight data recorder. So we had to go to them. We also decided, as is normal with investigations, to look at the human factors and operational information. We looked at the medical and psychological records of the flight crew. Interviews were conducted with pilots, engineers, superiors to assess the crew's proficiency, training history, and operational culture. We also actually interviewed their families and so on. We left no stone unturned. We also interpreted the weather. We looked at the weather on the day. And we looked at the META, which is the actual weather at the aerodromes. We looked at the TAFs, which are the terminal aerodrome forecasts, eyewitness observations, and then we also took data from the Ghana Meteorological Agency. Next, the investigation team decided to look at the whole organizational and systemic processes under which the aircraft was operated. So we examined the Ghana Air Force policies, their flying orders, and their operational oversight mechanisms. We looked at crew authorizations, We looked at the air tasking order procedures. Because, for instance, for the particular day, the task order that had been given was to fly the Minister of Defense and his party from Accra to Obuasi and back. We looked at Air Force oversight, its safety culture, and the adequacy of risk management systems. Having gotten all this factual information, we then moved to analysis and reconstruction. Using data from the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, radar tracks, and eyewitness accounts, the flight path was reconstructed. We also looked at various analysis of several data and other similar accidents. And then we pieced together the sequence of events leading to the accident. From that, we came up with our findings and causes, and then finally the safety recommendations. So, for the scope of flight, we looked at the history of the flight, we looked at the weather, we looked at the environment, we looked at the machine, that's the helicopter, we looked at human factors, the crew flying the plane. Then we looked at the organizational and systemic factors, sequence of events, and then we came to what we believed strongly was the cause of the accident. For the history of flight, we went before the flight to see what the pilots had been doing. And it's on record that their last 3 flights before the subject flight, the same crew had flown all the 3 flights before on the same helicopter. On the 2nd of August, they came from their base in Takoradi to Accra. It was a Medivac flight, 1 hour long. On the 3rd of August, the following day, they did a flight from Accra to Cape Coast, back to Accra. 1 hour, 20 minutes. It was also a medical evacuation flight, Medivac. On the 4th, they were tasked to go fly Accra to Salman, back to Accra. That was a 2 hour 30 flight. That was a bullion flight, cargo flight. On the 5th of August, they rested. Now, it helps to say here that in Ghana Air Force, there are flying limitations for the crew. You have 10 hours per week maximum, 62 hours maximum per month. Before flight, it's also accepted that if you've had a rest of 8 hours, you've had enough rest and you can go to work. They had in excess of 24 hours rest. On Wednesday, 6th August, the crew for the Z-9 aircraft, call sign, ISCAP, Hotel Romeo, India, planned to execute the task order for the Ministry of Defense. The flight was scheduled to depart at 8 a.m. with an estimated en route time of 50 minutes. The captain delayed the flight due to adverse weather in Accra, Kumasi, and Obuasi. The weather improved about an hour later. So, takeoff ended up at 12 minutes, 14 seconds after 9 a.m. Throughout the flight, the altitude changed to avoid low clouds. Now let me explain why this was so. The flight started out being conducted under visual flight rules. Now, if you're flying under visual flight rules, what it means is you're using visual references to navigate. It's a normal way of flying. So they were using visual cues to navigate to go to Obuasi. And so they had to stay away from cloud, in contact with the ground. So as the cloud base changed, They changed their altitude. Where they needed to avoid, they would avoid. I'd like you to take a look at these two pictures. Now, first of all, these pictures were taken in the environs of where the accident took place. Take note, it wasn't taken on the day of the accident, but it's just representative. The picture on the left shows the morning weather and shows you the visibility, gives you some idea of the visibility on the day. The picture on the right is taken from the same place, looking at the same area, and you can clearly see that you can make out the ridges in the terrain over there. And it's noteworthy that on the day of the flight, this visibility you are seeing that I'm telling you, you can't even see that as you can see. On the day, the visibility was much worse.
Ebusia na ye papa Paul for your retired captain. Ne nsem ni bia no ani nyina mu no. Mo sonfo Dan Kwesi Prince ya ni di akiri fili kadoji. Na nhwemu ya ba izeze ye ba ne day because na enkame agoye ze Ghana fo bi ze enkrofo bi ahyeda ana ya ye nso no. Eze nhwemu ya ba eze ye ba ne day. Yo. Na ni nyina mu na ha ya na ye de bebe so ye frame Dan Kwesi Prince da se ne biem. Ibi di ajiemu. Makrao.